Okay guys, now in example number 2, as I have here x squared minus 2x plus 1, let's say now we're just going to continue to look at some concepts, right? Like drawing diagrams. You may not be required to draw the diagrams in the exam, but let's just warm up with these diagrams just to get the whole idea of what's happening. So when we are working them out straightforward, you tend to relate to it a little bit better. Okay, so as I've said, in completing the square, I would use my first term in x, and I am going to use that to represent a square. Okay, so that's my square. My square has 4 equal sides. So just say to yourself that assume rather that all these sides are of equal length. Okay, now this side would be x and this side would also be x. Okay, now what I'm gonna do, again as I've stated earlier, is that I am going to always take my b, okay, my middle term, and I'm going to split it into 2 equal parts. And if I divide negative 2 by 2 rather, I would get negative 1x plus negative x, and that's a 1x. Okay, so what this is saying essentially is that I am going to add a negative 1 to both sides. Okay, so here I would have a 1, okay, and here also I would have another 1. Okay, since my b is 1, right? So I would have a plus, and it's a plus negative 1. Okay, and also I am adding here a plus negative 1. All right, so this here would be my length. You know that this would work out to be x plus 1 minus 1 is really x minus 1. Okay, so that's the length of the side, because when two different signs clash, you would get a positive. Okay guys, so also here would work out to be x minus 1. Okay, so this length from here to here is x minus 1, and also this length from here to here is also x minus 1. So when we look now carefully, we would have realized that a part of our diagram is missing, and as we have always stated, let me just make a note of it quickly, that here is x minus 1, this length is x minus 1, and also this length at the side is x minus 1. So we have an x minus 1 all squared. Now this little piece that is left out, it's just one box. Okay, so that relates to the constant, my c, that I have here in my expression, and since it's one box, I'm going to have to subtract 1, because that's the portion that was missing. So 1 minus 1 would give me 0, so I would have 0 here. Okay, you can leave it like that, or you could say plus 0 if that makes you feel a bit more comfortable, and that would be my answer. Okay, so I would have completed the square. Okay, we can look at it, and we can look at it in terms of working it out. When completing the square, we can take the same thing. The coefficient of x squared is 1. We can say, going back to my original, I could have said working this same problem. In the exam, you won't really be required to draw a diagram, so you could just go ahead straight into it, and you could say if I have x squared minus 2x plus 1, you could say I'm taking a half of b and I'm going to square it. Okay, so a half of b would be, if b is in this case is negative 2, so you would be saying to yourself that a half of negative 2 would be 1. Okay, so half of 2 is negative 1, and I'm going to square negative 1. Okay guys, so here you would have x squared minus 2x plus, and you would add it here, -1 all squared, and you would say plus 1, the one that you have here, and now you are going to subtract your -1 all squared. Okay, so in this line, this implies now that we would have here, I'm going to take out my square terms, so you are going to say x minus, remember this is a -1 all squared, and then you're going to say this is a plus 1, and when I minus, remember that's a plus 1, and you have a minus sign following the 1, and when you square -1 you'll get a positive 1. Okay, so you would have x minus 1 all squared, which we have here, okay, and then you would say 1 minus 1 is 0. So here this implies that x minus 1 all squared and 1 minus 1, you would have your 0, and that's your answer. Okay, and as you see, it's the same thing we get back. So basically this is how you work it out. If you're not required to draw a diagram in the exam, so you could go straight ahead and work it out. We'll look at a few more examples before we move on. Okay, but if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask them, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.